Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. And today we're on PTCGO because all the scans and stuff have been put onto here from the new set so we can start playing with these new cards. Also, there's a fantastic feature on PTCGO that's just come out where even if you don't have the cards, you can sort of proxify it in your own deck. So this is probably the best way for us to start showing you decks from the new stuff at least, because even if we don't have them, we can take you through our thought processes and why we've selected these sorts of cards despite us not quite having them all yet. So that's pretty good for us. So today it's going to be Mega Tyranitar. It's sort of been shrouded in sort of controversy. Some people think this is a very, very good card. Some people think it's pretty much garbage. And I think there are some people sort of in the middle thinking, yeah, it's kind of okay. Maybe it's not time to shine just yet, but it will come a time where T-Tar can be a very playable deck. So let's jump into the list. First of all, we should talk about the Tyranitar. The regular T-Tar EX has like terrible attacks, nothing really good going for it. It's dark typing with psychic resistance, which is kind of good, I guess. A huge 4 retreat cost, which is monstrous. Weakness to fighting is pretty awkward, seeing as though there's still quite a few good fighting types around. Even now, like Hawlucha has Hex Maniac available to it. Any fighting deck can do big things against T-Tar. Also, there's still Lucario around. There's still like Dugtrio and Medicham. All of these things are going to be hitting for weakness on T-Tar, which isn't too nice. His attacks are awful. Hammering 60 for 3 energy is pretty bad. And Ground Break, although it's a decent number, it's a very expensive attack cost, and you have to do 10 to each of your own bench Pokemon. I think it would be slightly better if it was 10 to each of our opponent's Pokemon, because then it can have that niche use against like Sceptile decks where you can put damage counters across the board for the Mega, but it doesn't even do that. So pretty bad attacks overall. We're pretty much never going to be using this guy if we can help it. It's all about the Mega T-Tar EX. 240 HP is really nice because it's on the chunkier side of an EX. It also has the Theta Double, and this is a thing that makes it very good and very bad at the same time in some people's opinions. You can have up to 2 tool cards attached to you. That means in a perfect world we can go Spirit Link and then have, well, in this deck we're playing Hard Charm and we're also playing a single weakness policy to try and get around that fighting weakness. But mainly we're going to try and put Hard Charm on here so that we stay out of range of Rayquaza EXs and pretty much anything else. Make it difficult for people to two-shot us, and that's a really nice thing to go from. Meaning that we can get multiple attacks off from one Tyranitar, and that's a pretty good way of helping us win in the end. An issue with this Theta Double is that disruption-based decks, Toad is still around, and Manectric sometimes like to play Flare Tools, and Flare Tools really hurt Tyranitar because you can actually put 2 on here, which is pretty disgusting. It pretty much renders your Tyranitar useless with 2 Headringers on here. So it's something to look out for. Theta Double is a really nice thing, but it's also quite awkward. I think if it didn't even have this, I think it would actually be more playable because based on his attack cost alone, it can almost be played like it's a Groudon deck where you don't even play the Spirit Link. You just sacrifice your turn to Mega Evolve and have the Hard Charm for the health. But the Theta Double makes it, slightly better and slightly more awkward at the same time. Anyway, let's move on to the attack. It is an absolutely monstrous attack. Destroy King, for 2 dark and 2 colorless, it's pretty convenient energy, really, because we have Mega Turbo and we have energy acceleration through Yveltal, and we have double colorless that we can use. So it's actually fairly easy to get this attack going in like 3 or 4 turns. And Destroyer King doing 110 base damage, that's already really nice numbers. It means we don't have to do anything else just to hit through like Wobbuffets. We're two-shotting things regardless, even if we don't have the perfect setup. We can hit Shaymins, so great number, 110. And then the additional damage is crazy. You do 60 more damage for each damage counter already on your opponent's active Pokemon. This is absolutely monstrous, so essentially we're going to be using the bats in here to manipulate this damage. So if there's 2 counters on our opponent's active, we're doing an extra 120 damage to make the Destroy King attack do 230, and then the bat drop is going to be the extra 20, so that we can actually one-hit all Mega Pokemon, even Wailords. So this is pretty fantastic, huge output, and there are times where you can just do hilarious numbers because you've already hit them for Destroy King, not for the knockout, and then you get to do an extra 660 damage. So that's pretty cool. So T-Tar, definitely a big hitter in the set. That's something we can't deny, but how playable it is going to be proven very soon, I guess. So next up we have Yveltal pairing up with it. I think Yveltal's a great partner. It has acceleration with Oblivion Wing for 30 damage as well. So that really helps us to come in with the Tyranitar later on in the game, because we've already been hitting things for 30 odd damage here and there. Obviously it helps us attach to our Tyranitar as well, so we're getting energy all over the board. And it has a really nice resistance to fighting. This really helps out against, once again, these fighting type attackers. Lucario, even though its first attack does hit through resistance, it's still doing fairly low output, and we have 130 HP, so Yveltal's normally going to last 2 to 3 turns, and really help set up our T-Tar in the opening, as well as putting those damage counters around the board. Next up we have 2 Shaymin EX. Shaymin with the setup, of course, helping us draw more cards. Pretty standard, really. Couple of things to note: we do have double colourless, so if we want to Sky Return, maybe we don't have any damage counters on the opponent's active EX, maybe we've prized a Golbat or something, or they have the Theta Stop or something like that. If they're a Sceptile deck, we can Sky Return up a Shaymin, bring something else into the active, and then come in with a T-Tar next turn to finish them off. So again, even these little pokes for 30, they can be very, very meaningful for Tyranitar decks. So you do have to worry basically when you've been hit for 30 damage if you're playing against T-Tar, because that can be enough for the T-Tar to come in and swing. So very nice there. We all know what Shaymin's all about, but I'm just saying the added combo with the DC is something to look out for little plays you can do, rather than just automatically looking for your switch to move the Shaymin. Sometimes that 30 damage is enough. Next up we are playing 1 Hooper EX in here. The Scoundrel Ring is just such a fantastic ability for all Mega Pokemon, really. If we Ultra Ball to find a Hooper, it means we can go Tyranitar, Mega T-Tar, and Shaymin. It really helps us set up our board, so it just makes Ultra Balls very, very powerful now. I don't think we really need more than 1 in here, because we already have a fairly decent amount of Pokemon Search in the deck. But having the 1 is just fantastic. Also, I wouldn't really like to play more than 1 just for bench space issues, because as you can see down here, we are playing some of the bats as well, so normally there's only space for like 1 Hooper on the bench anyway. It does kind of hurt when it's prized, but really I think I'm happy with just the 1 in here. And finally, the way we're going to try and put these damage counters on for Destroy King, it's going to be the bats. It's a pretty simple combo. We're playing 3 of the Zubat. It doesn't have free retreat anymore, which kind of sucks, but it does have a fairly decent utility attack called Skill Dive. You get to do 10 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Sort of setting up for Tyranitar. You still need more counters than 10 most of the time, unless you're hitting into non-EXs, so it's not fantastic, but it is a little thing to bear in mind. And we are just playing 2 of the Golbat. Sneaky Bite, I think we only really need 2 in here, in testing at least. Our first couple of counters are going to come via the Yveltal, so that we can do Destroy Kings, and then for your other couple of prizes, that's when you can start using your bats. So that's pretty good. And also there are times where your Tyranitar does get knocked out, and then you have to go back into a Yveltal, so you don't really need like a 4-4-2 line of the Crobats, because it's just going to be too clunky for this sort of deck. I'm happy with a 3-2 right now, potentially put it up to a 3-3 to be slightly safer. At the moment I'm trying to sneak a weakness policy in here, but that could easily be cut for a Golbat if you're not too worried about those fighting types. So the Golbat, the Sneaky Bite is all you need for Destroy King to do its damage, so most of the time you're putting this on the active Pokemon, so T-Tar can come in for big knockouts. Alternatively, if they have something you don't want to kill in the active, you can snipe it wherever you want, really. You also have the Swoop Across. It can sometimes combine with like an early Zubat attack, then you can come in with the Golbat and Swoop Across to fulfill those costs. It can be useful again sometimes, but it's very niche, really. Sneaky Bite's the main reason why we have the Golbat. And also, if you start with Zubat, you're going to look for one fairly early, so you can just free retreat out of there. So it's nice having a free retreater in the deck. It gives us good options for when things get knocked out. We can send out the bat and then decide who wants to come up for the end of the turn to either attack or just be something to be hit in the face. So it's good to have a free retreater in the deck just in general. On to trainers now. I found this fairly difficult to do the 60 cards, really, because it's kind of a clunky deck. There's things that you definitely need in here. There's things that you want to play. But there's not really that much space just because you need to have these bats in here. You need to have the 3/3 Mega and all of this stuff. So try to be fairly streamlined. There's a couple of techie supporters, but hopefully you guys can see what's going on here. We are playing the one compressor. I'd probably like to play more because it synergizes so nicely with Mega Turbo and with Yveltal. And it can also put some of these techie supporters into the discard pile for use with VS Seeker. At the moment, again, this weakness policy is really clogging up a slot in my deck. Really, I can only just say time is going to tell whether Lucario is going to be like top of tier 1 or not. If it is, then the weakness policy probably has to stay. But if not, it can be like a nice slot for a Golbat or maybe a double compressor in here. So it's something to bear in mind, really. We do have 3 Mega Turbo. Although the Yveltal is going to be the thing we look for early game for acceleration, to me it seems like once the first Tyranitar goes down, we're going to be relying on Mega Turbo to get us back so that we can chain T-Tars, whereas otherwise we'd have to go back into one of these, swing for 30, go down another prize, and then at that point your Tyranitar that you're stacking up on the bench is basically just a target for a catcher. So I prefer having 3 Mega Turbo in here to try and go Tyranitar, then one dies, then you can Mega Turbo, or like Mega Turbo, you've already got an energy, and then you just attach DCE, and you're ready to go again. So I like having the 3 in here, really, for usage in the sort of mid to late game. We have 2 Switch, everything's pretty chunky. It does suck if we start with like a Hooper or a Shaman sometimes. Yveltal even has a 2 retreat cost. We don't have Darkrai anymore, so we sort of need to play a couple of Switch in here. The T-Tar, of course, both of them have huge retreat costs, and we don't really want to start with these because they're just going to get hit in the face too often and probably die before we get an attack off. So 2 Switch is pretty standard, really. We're playing the 4 Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball, I think, is going to be a 4 of in most XY on decks, just because it gets you into your Shamans, and in this deck specifically, it gets us into Hooper, which then gets us into all of our other Pokemon. I think Ultra Ball is just so powerful in XY on. It's basically like a supporter in itself, because the amount of draw you get from it is just so nice. Following on from that, we have 3 VS Seeker, combined sometimes with that techie 1 Battle Compressor that we have. And of course we play a couple of things in here where we're going to want to VS Seeker them back. Stuff like Lysander's, the AZ as well sometimes, and just Juniper in general. So here are the supporters. We're playing 1 AZ. One of the reasons why I think it's fine to just play a 3-2 bat line. We have the AZ to sometimes pick one up if we really are desperate. But in general, the AZ can be picked up to reuse a Shaman for almost like a draw supporter. And sometimes if we are hit with these headringers and stuff early on, we can try and AZ out of there and then start reattaching again with the Oblivion Wing as if nothing's happened. I like having the AZ. It's pretty good utility overall. Almost as good as a draw supporter because we have so few good ones at the moment. We can just use it on a Shaman to try and draw us like 3 or 4 cards. So I like having the AZ. Like I say, it's good for the bat as well. So very good card to have in here as a one-of. There are times when you're going to get good value out of this. We're also playing 1 Hex Maniac. Hex Maniac is pretty good in this deck. We sort of need it to get through Aegislashes because DC is quite an important part of our deck. It also gets around Giratina because of course we are a Mega Pokemon. So those are the 2 main ones we're going for. Also, as you can see, we are playing quite a few trainers and they are pretty valuable to us. Definitely like we need the Spirit Links and stuff so we don't waste turns. So Hex Maniac, also a good option against the trainer locking Vileplume deck. So that's pretty nice there. The final one-of supporter we're playing is a single Fan Club. I was saying how important the Ultra Balls are, and essentially I wanted a 5th slot there, so we pretty much have good outs to getting basic Pokemon early on in the game. Because the bats are so important to set up, also we need to set up these Hoopers and get the Tyranitars going as quickly as possible. Losing turns, because this deck is already very slow, is really painful, so having that extra search card, I just like having the option for it. Also, it can be Compressor via Seekerable, so when we need to, we can have a Fan Club in here. Next up, we're playing 2 Lysander. Setting up Destroyer Kings can be quite difficult, so a Lysander on a Shaman can be a great way to finish off without having to have these bat drops, which is pretty important. Also, just in general, if we've placed counters where we want to and then we catch her up for Destroyer Kings, just overall it's pretty useful. Then we have the 3 Birch in here. I'm preferring Birch to Shauna in this deck because a lot of it works from the discard pile and you don't really need much going on in the opening turns anyway. So I feel like it's sort of worth the coin flip, if that makes sense, to get you into 7 cards for the chance. I don't know, really. You could flip-flop the Birch Shawn account. You could just play full Shauna. You could play like a 2-1 split either way you want. At the moment, I'm happy with Birch. It seems to be working okay in testing. We have 4 Sycamore as well. Pretty standard. Gets the most amount of cards we can of a supporter. It can also help us get Darks in the discard pile, which is pretty nice. On to the tools. I've mentioned the weakness policy a lot. It's pretty simple. Fightings, I think, are going to be around, and they are an issue for T-Tar. So weakness policy sort of covers us there. You could also play a single Shadow Circle, but I don't really like just playing one because it will just keep getting bounced anyway. So one weakness policy I'm quite a fan of. We have the 3 Spirit Links so that we don't waste our turn Mega Evolving. It's really not that important wasting the Mega. It's more about getting this 30 damage on things that we need, in my own experience. Sometimes you could play this deck completely without Spirit Links. If you want to do that, I would insist on a 3rd Golbat, because you're going to be missing out on Oblivion Wings early on. And sometimes you could just go for a full Hard Charm, super tanky, let's never let our T-Tar die. That could be a strategy people go for in the new format, because having a set effectively 280 health is ridiculous, and then you can have healing cards in there as well, like the Pokemon Center Lady. That could be a niche that T-Tar can fill. At the moment, I like it with Spirit Links, just because, you can be so weak to in Megaphones if you are going for the full tanky build. So I like just having the usage out of Spirit Link so that we can Mega, and then if we do get Megaphoned, we only lose 1 Hard Charm on us, or nothing at all. So I like having the 3 Spirit Link. I think overall it just helps us set up our energy more than anything. So yeah, we are playing the 3 Hard Charm. It's so that we stay out of range of a lot of decks, make it difficult for a lot of things to even 2-shot us. So Hard Charm, just more health effectively, hoping to keep T-Tar around for that extra turn or 2 to get the most value out of this expensive attack cost. Finally, we have the energy. 3 DCE, 8 Dark. I'm pretty happy with the number, really. Seeing as though we're accelerating so many Dark energies from the discard pile, I feel like we actually have plenty of options to get into these early on. For the Ultra Balls and for the Junipers, to get them in the discard pile. There's the Compressor as well, sometimes, that we can hit off. So that's pretty nice. I don't think we need more than 3 double colorless energy, because Enhanced Hammer is just so good XY on. Almost everything I'm playing has at least 3 special energies in the deck. So there's always going to be chances where Enhanced Hammer is going to be clutch. So I'd prefer just to play the 3, slap it on right at the end so we're ready for the Destroyer King, so we always get value out of it, which is pretty important. So 3-8 I think is a decent split. Overall, I think it's a pretty decent deck. This is a fairly streamlined build of T-Tar, I would say, in my own opinion. A couple of things you might want to think about. Against Sceptile, you might want some sort of stadium. You might want the new Faded Town, or you might even want the Magma's Secret Base, or the Magma's Hideout, or whatever it's called, to put damage counters on the board. If you are going for that, it's kind of risky, because they still play high counts of the Plant Forest, or whatever it's called, so you have to be pretty careful about when you're using that. Also, the Faded Town only works going back in. It's like an in-between turns effect, so you don't automatically do it, so the Destroyer King is not immediate. So all of those things are something to consider when trying to get around Sceptile. Other than that, I think it can stand up to quite a few things in the format. The main thing is disruption decks. Toad is still going to be a very, very difficult matchup for it, because they just have so much energy denial in the early turns. They can headringer you, they can get rid of your own tools and stuff like that. They can catch around all your chunky things. I feel like that's just a horrible, horrible matchup for you. So there are things for T-Tar to worry about. But also, if you're up against a Rayquaza, I think you're fairly favourable, to be honest. Just because you stay out of range, and for the most part, you're going to be one-shotting them with a combination of bats and the early Oblivion Wings and stuff like that. And they don't have many non-EX options that they can throw in the way to stop the Destroyer King doing its work. So I think there's good and bad matchups for this deck. Very interesting one. I wish I could go into a battle right now, but as you can see, I have proxies. So it might be that at a later date, when I have these T-Tars, I just do a full-on battle video for maybe an hour or so. So that's something to look forward to. For now, I just wanted to present the deck, because everyone's getting a bit of buzz about this card for good and bad reasons. So I thought I'd profile how I would like to build a deck and play it. So tell me what you think down below. Tell me your thoughts on Tyranitar in general. Do you think it's great? Do you think it's garbage? I think, like I say, there are matchups where it has a good chance of winning. There's definitely matchups where I think it will just fail. And that's not really what you look for in a really good card. So there it is, Tyranitar. Let me know your thoughts on the card and how you would build the deck. If there's anything maybe I missed or should be playing in this T-Tar deck, I'd love to hear from you. So I've been Joe, like I say, from Omnipoke, and I will see you guys next time.